In this podcast episode, we want to introduce you to our BCEN friend, Tyler Reeves. Come along as Janie Shoemaker and Holly Briggs talk with Tyler about his career in flight nursing. He will discuss his passion for patient care and what keeps him motivated. This episode is called More Than My Hometown, Spotlight on the 2024 Distinguished CFRN Award winner.
Hello, and welcome to the BCEN Friends podcast, where we hold interesting conversations about learning with a range of thought leaders, BCEN certification holders, and industry professionals. But most importantly, to create value and insight for you, our professional nurses across the emergency spectrum. We hope you find our discussions interesting, informative, sometimes funny, sometimes serious, and always valuable. I'm Holly Briggs, professional development specialist at BCEN and one of your hosts for today. I'm joined by my co-host, Janie Shoemaker, CEO at BCEN. Hi, Janie.
Hello, Holly.
Thanks for being with us today. In this episode of BCEN and Friends, we have Tyler Reeves. Tyler is an emergency nurse who has carved out a path from CNA to flight nurse with lots of accomplishment in between those roles. More to come on that shortly. So without further delay, Janie, could you please introduce us to our BCEN friend, Tyler?
Yes, I can. It would be my pleasure. Tyler Reeves started his career at Clara Barton Hospital in Great Bend, Kansas. He advanced from CNA to LPN and then RN, eventually spending a decade there with the initial start in med-surg, then moving on to the emergency department. While working in the ED, Tyler had the opportunity to join the Barton County Transfer Service as a ground transport nurse for 4 years. In 2018, Tyler became a flight nurse with EagleMed, initially stationed in Goodland, Kansas. Here, he obtained his CFRN and CEN credentials. Tyler also furthered his pre-hospital training, becoming a Nationally Registered Paramedic in 2022 and gaining experience at Ellis County EMS. In August of 2022, Tyler transferred to a new rotor base, EagleMed 10 in Great Bend, Kansas. Tyler keeps busy as the founder of KanStaff Nurses LLC, pulling shifts with the Ellis County EMS and his favorite role, which is being a dad. Tyler has grown his career in the past 11 years as a nurse and continues to excel in his diverse and impactful career. It is no surprise to those who know Tyler that he was the recipient of the 2024 Distinguished CFRN Award. And we are so proud of you, Tyler, for that. And a big congratulations there. And I did get to attend your award visit, and it's been one of my favorite ones so far. You had such a showing of support from your community and your colleagues. So anyway, Tyler, welcome to the BCEN and Friends podcast. We're so happy that you're with us today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate the opportunity, and it's truly a blessing to be here.
All right. Well, tell us a little more about this healthcare career of yours. How did you become so passionate about flight nursing in particular?
Well, my grandparents, back when I was younger, they both had a number of health things, and through a little bit of non-compliance, we got to see EagleMed a lot come into the neighboring hospital about 15 miles to the east. I remember being out front one day during one of my grandpa's STEMIs and watching the helicopter come in, and that was just so amazing to watch. And, we're all obviously emotional and, thinking grandpa's going to pass away. And I watched the crew as they got out, and watching somebody come in such a scary moment that was turning our lives upside down, and they just walk in like, oh, it's another Tuesday. I said to myself, I want to be so good at something like that someday. No matter what it is that I do, I want to be that confident and comfortable in what I do and be that much of an expert.
Yeah, that's amazing. It is pretty sobering to be on that end of the family where you are so scared and see those confident flight nurses come in. And I think it oftentimes gives people such a sense of, okay, I think maybe things could be okay. Wow, my family member's in such good hands, because you all are very calming and very confident when you come in. And it is a really neat role in nursing, I think. It's just one of the most autonomous and well-respected, certainly.
And to dovetail with what Janie was saying, that's someone who really didn't have a background in medicine, that was really a family member, to see that you picked up on the confidence and the way that they were able to translate that to family. I will say that even as a nurse, I am also usually so impressed and so relieved when they show up. I'm like, oh, thank goodness you're here. And it just gives you that assurance that the right person is there, that your patient's going to get the care that they need to get from where they are to where they will eventually get maybe that definitive care. And it's awesome that you were able to go from seeing that in action as a patient, a family member, to then now that's what you provide to your patients and the family members that you interact with. So really, I mean, honestly, full circle there. Wow. So I will ask this, what are some of the most common transports that you and your team do? And then my follow-up to that is, obviously without violating HIPAA or anything like that, is there just a patient encounter that has really stuck out to you where you just had one of those learning moments?
Yeah, so some of the more common ones that we do are a lot of cardiac. We're kind of getting into the world of Impellas that are coming around now. So we've been doing more training for that. We had always been trained for it, but you just see more of the transports coming around now. A lot of strokes, and of course, a lot of traumas. That's where the vast majority of our scene flights come from. But we also get some cardiac and respiratory emergency scene flights as well. In our area of Kansas, we're about 2-hour drive from Great Bend to the closest level 1 trauma center. If you're going to go down the road to Kansas City, it's 4 hours. And when I was out in Goodland, it's about the same thing, 2.5, 3 hours to the closest level 1. So we're utilized quite a bit. There's a shortage of EMS as well around here. I mean, it's not uncommon to go to counties that have 0 to 1 paramedic for the entire county, and they might not be working that day. So we do get a lot of exposure that way. My patient encounter that really stuck out to me as a learning moment was back in my fixed wing days. And, that was when I started my flight career. So, you were kind of scared of everything there for a while. I remember going to work with, my 3-hour drive out to work with knots in my stomach and just listening to any podcast I could listen to on the way out there, trying to better myself. But it was quite a jump going into the flight world. And one night, in the middle of COVID, we got sent up into Nebraska for a patient that had been on BiPAP for multiple days. And they're like, we'll have him intubated before you get here. It was going out to eastern Nebraska. And we get in there and the patient's definitely not intubated. They're still on BiPAP, and which was pretty common for COVID. But you have to think in these transports, I only have so much oxygen on a fixed wing or on a helicopter. And when you have somebody on high demand BiPAP that's breathing 30, 40 times a minute, you're not going to make that transport. So it's either leave them there to probable certain death or transfer them on. And, there's still that chance, but they'll have access to better services. And so we walk in, they're like, yeah, this patient he's been on BiPAP for 3 days, continues to get worse. He's breathing about 40 times a minute. He's on 100% FiO2. And we're like, we hooked him up to our oxygen tank and we noticed the needle. You can just actively seeing it drop with every breath. And we're like, we're going to be lucky just to make it out to the ambulance. So we're going to have to intubate him. Problem with that during COVID was that once you intubated somebody, you kind of sealed their fate. COVID didn't like having plastic shoved down people's, tracheas. So we went ahead and intubated him because that was kind of our only option. And that was my first ever tube. I was already nervous, and there was a paramedic standing next to me that took us into the hospital. Really nice, super helpful. And after I got him intubated, I was like, okay, great. And he goes to pull out my rigid stylet. And I'm like, gosh, it just got really easy to bag this patient. Like, that was easier than I was thinking. Well, he had dislodged my ET tube in the process. So kind of got it, but there was an asterisk there as well because, well, we ended up having to give it another go and got that again. But I guess the learning point from that is train, and make sure that you have down that good muscle memory, because you never know when the patient you're going to intubate is down in 80% range and you can't get them higher. And also sometimes there's a thing is too much help.
I was at the bedside during COVID, and yeah, there were just being in the hospital. I felt like there were changes all the time as far as like okay, this is the new protocol, this is the new way to approach things, this is how patients are doing. And obviously everyone's kind of just learning as we go, right? We're all catching up on what they just found out yesterday about how to take care of patients. So I can imagine just having that flexibility, and that probably felt like a lot of pressure.
Well, I would say that at EagleMed, they give us a lot of training and education. Part of coming into that flight nurse role and being in a new world is you're really having to make some pretty big decisions off very little information, and being experienced, being prepared. Preparedness gets you through a lot in this job. Essentially, aeromedical is more or less a 911 for EMS services, or a 911 for hospitals. Like, hey, that's who they call when they need a panic button to hit. And so you're expected to walk in with confidence and, okay, hey, I can do a chest tube on this person. I can intubate them and put them on a ventilator. Now, when you get to that, it's kind of understanding your equipment, because we're bringing a lot of equipment out to the rural area that they don't have access to. That's kind of more metro type stuff. And procedures, there's a lot of physician level procedures like chest tubes and surgical crikes and pericardiocentesis that we bring to the table. And when it's time to do those, we need to be prepared to do that, and not, well, I didn't really practice this in the last 3 months. That's not really acceptable.
When I visited, Tyler, when I visited different flight bases, when you do have some downtime, I often find the nurses and paramedics practicing those very things you were just talking about, so that you are prepared. And, speaking of, jumping in, there are a lot of nurses out there. There are student nurses out there. A lot of them have goals of one day jumping into that flight suit and taking off and experiencing this kind of nursing that you just described. So tell us, Tyler, what kind of skills do they need to start developing as they're planning this leap into flight nursing? What kind of skills do they really need to come prepared with?
So my experience, at least from what I can speak from, was in the ER. And our company in general, the requirements are usually 3 years of ER or ICU experience at a busier ICU or higher acuity. I think it's kind of one of those things that's hard to prepare for, because you don't know what you don't know. And I remember studying for my critical care test. I'm like, wow, I never considered this. I'm trying to get my hands on everything. And oh, now you have to learn about altitudes and how that takes effect on the body, Boyle's law and Henry's law, and all of those things. I would say the best way to do that, go out to your local air base and see if you can do a fly along, and just kind of see if that's what you really like. Because there's people who are like, oh my gosh, I love those flight suits. Those look so awesome. And you get to wear a cool helmet and you get to fly in and do all this cool stuff. And they get up there and find out they really don't like flying. So I think getting that hands-on experience, talking to healthcare providers, but really just taking the opportunity to do anything you possibly can. If you work in a bigger hospital, go up and talk to the RT and ask about, hey, how do you work this ventilator? Kind of what does some of this mean? Get to go in on procedures. Take every opportunity you have available and make the time to do that, because it is a big jump coming from flight. I don't care if you were a medic in the ambulance. I don't care if you were a nurse in the ER ICU. You get here, and the first thing I thought as an ER nurse is, wow, I was really a liability not knowing all of this stuff. And so it's definitely unique and kind of makes you rise to the occasion.
It sounds very almost sobering, cute, when you have this idea of like, oh, I'd love to do this one day. And then you get into it and you realize, oh, I've got a lot to learn. No matter how much experience I bring, this goal, this opportunity to be, to further myself and to grow, there's always that added responsibility, that depth of knowledge that you're going to have to kind of get through those gaps that you have that maybe you didn't even realize you had at the time, right? So I'm excited to see where you're going to go in the future, Tyler. I know we said it already, but congratulations on being selected as the 2024 Distinguished CFRN Award winner. It's very clear to me, just from this conversation that we've had and reading your nomination for your CFRN Award, that you really have placed a lot of value on giving back to your colleagues, your community. You obviously believe in the importance of certification and lifelong learning, continued training, continued professional growth. But can you tell us why you believe these things are important? Like, why do you hold those things in such high value?
Yeah, it's cliche, but I love to care for people and all that jazz. But I'm one of the few people at our base that live in this area. I, currently reside in Great Bend. And so when our crew's going out to pick somebody up or any of the other close helicopters or fixed wings that we have, they could be taking care of my family. That could easily be me in the ER bed or in the ditch that I'm hoping one of our crews comes in is just really excellent and does the best possible for them. And you try to honor the people from EagleMed that came before you, the people that I looked up to, because they were on a pedestal when I was a baby nurse. They were the heroes, and I just watched them clamoring over what they were doing. And I'm like, gosh, that's a big task to be up to their level, but I need to be up to that. And I think that being in a rural Kansas area, that you're having to take care of these patients for 40 minutes in the air, sometimes an hour and 45 minutes, depending on where we're going. And you're really the only chance to get them there and on to a higher level of care. And I think you have to take pride in that. And we owe that to the citizens of our service area and beyond to do that. I don't think that you can have all the education and experience in the world, but these patients don't really care how long you had to study, how late you had to stay up studying. They just care that you get it right when they're in your care. And, by us doing a great job, somebody gets to celebrate more birthdays. You get more Christmases with your kids. You get the special moments of having grandkids and watching high school graduations and celebrating everybody. And I think it's really easy when you see such horrible things sometimes to think, oh, this is just another patient. We don't get a whole lot of follow-up a lot of the time after we drop them off. And hey, guess what? Hey, I know you guys just got done with a difficult call, but hey, we have another one holding for you. So you don't always get a lot of time to reflect. Kind of a cool one was I had a gentleman that I've flown him twice in 2 weeks. And I said, hey, we have their Medcare membership. And I went over there and we ended up sitting in his living room talking for 3 hours and just visiting. And it's nice to be able to connect with your patients like that and have a good time and remember, yeah, that's somebody's grandpa, that's somebody's dad. And we just had the best time. So, I really enjoy that aspect of it too. And somebody being in the community where I work, I get caught in Walmart. Hey, you saved my family member, or hey, just wanted to give you an update. They didn't end up making it. But we really appreciated you guys there. We were so happy to see you guys walk through the door. I guess it's a little bit more personal when you are in the same community as those people and see them still walking around at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think it would be really hard not to sometimes know how something turned out. And having been to your community, Tyler, I can imagine it's not a humongous metropolitan area. It's not super tiny either, I didn't think, but I could see how you would see the same people and knowing that you gave them excellent care and being able to hear how they're doing. I bet you that's a real positive reward for you. You make a humongous difference for that person on the worst day that they've ever had. And that's what it's all about. I'm going to shift gears and see if you can tell us about a person or a moment in your career that just greatly impacted you.
Yeah, so this is the part where it gets a little bit windy because I'm all about thanking people and remembering the people that took care of you well. So it started with my folks. It was, I grew up in Wilson, Kansas, which is really a town of like several hundred people, super rural. And we have a lot of farmers around there. So being here doing this was never expected in my lifetime. My parents always really instilled hard work. Back in the day, I had about 10 different jobs that I wanted to do. And my mom's like, yeah, sure, you can go do those, but you're going to go to college first. And so she always pushed me to do that. And fun story about that. In the end, once my brothers both graduated from high school, I said, okay, you've been talking about nursing school and everything. Now it's your turn to go now that we're all graduated from high school. So my mom ended up going and getting her nursing a couple years after I did. So, and she's killing it, enjoying what she does. As I moved on over to Clara Barton Hospital in Hoisington, we had a nurse over there that there was a few that were really great, but one that always took me under his wing. His name was Nathan Pummel. And he was just, I mean, he's one of those people that can teach to anybody and incredibly brilliant. I still talk to him this day, even though he's in another state. And he's my person that I call for blunt advice. He's not going to sugarcoat anything. He's not Willy Wonka. He's one of those people that if he tells you you're screwing up in life, take notice. Like he's one of those kind of friends. As I get on to EagleMed, I had my preceptor and one of my very best friends, Jason Johnson. He's a CFRN and respiratory therapist out at Goodland and is now the base medical manager out at EagleMed 24. He really told me about advanced certification and really put the fear of God in me. Hey, bro, this is a really tough course. I wouldn't wait around for it. Let's study. Let's get you up to date. And he was always pushing for that. And, he's been through a lot with me over the last 6 years that I've known him. And he's just kind of, a secondary dad figure that you can always talk to about anything. And I hold him in very high regard. As I came over to EagleMed 10, I had a really good partner. Her name's Stacy White, and she was a paramedic. And she came on a little bit after we got started, and she came over from the competition that we have here in the States. So I would give her a lot of crap about that. And we just always had a really good connection. We're both aggressive in what we do in the way of we're very aggressive towards education. We're, aggressive towards patient care when you need it. We need to be at our best, kind of that alpha personality. But at the same time, you see her at bedside and she's just so nice and pleasant to everybody. But I learned a lot from her as well. She'd been doing like paramedicine for a couple of years before I had, and she just came with a wealth of knowledge. So I really enjoy picking her brain, and I'm pretty sure I didn't teach her anything, but we had a lot of great times in our flights. And after I started at EagleMed 10, I met my girlfriend Amanda, and she's a trauma nurse at one of the level ones we have in Wichita. And just an amazing person. She holds me in high regard like I walk on water. And I definitely don't, but I always strive to be at that level, to have the answers to her questions, to guide her through anything that she has, because she expects that, and I don't want to disappoint her. But at the same time, I also learn a lot from her since she's in the trauma specialty. She keeps me balanced out. Sometimes if I'm in a mood or a little passionate about something, she can always talk me down. So she's been an excellent person in my life as well.
And then last but certainly not least is my son Blake. He's really my motivation and inspiration for everything that I do personally and professionally. I always hope that I'm showing him that passion, hard work, and dedication does pay off, and always being, of course, the best role model as his dad. I hope he always takes away the best parts of me and leaves behind the imperfections, which God knows there's plenty of those. He's always very supportive. I do work 24-hour shifts, and occasionally with all the school stuff and sports activities, sometimes that all gets kind of intertwined and collides together. And it always really eats me alive that I have to miss anything. And he's always very positive and says, "Oh, it's okay, Dad. Don't worry about it. You'll make the next one." And I just really appreciate that. And even though it bothers me no end, there's always that glimmer of positivity that kind of pushes us across the finish line. And I just greatly love him. He's really the driving force that keeps me moving and heading in the right direction.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like throughout your career, you've just linked up with like the right person for that season of your career who kind of helped you get to that next level. And I think anybody listening to this podcast, hopefully you had at least one of those experiences, if not more than that, where somebody got you in that place in your career where you just needed someone to either push you to that next level, challenge you, maybe get you out of your comfort zone, and really help you to grow into the nurse that you wanted to be, that you've always wanted to be. And none of us are finished. It sounds like that's what you're doing. Like I said, I'm excited for the future as well, because it sounds like you've just got some more things on the horizon. So I do get the chance to ask a few rapid fire questions, and they're really just so we can get to know you better as a person. And so they're kind of your favorites. So this is a good question. I'm actually super curious as to what career outside of healthcare would you like to try? Or let's just say that you had to do something outside of healthcare. What would it be?
I think that I would probably be a chef, go to culinary school. I like to cook. I'm kind of a whiz on the Blackstone that we have at work, and my family used to own a restaurant, and I really enjoyed that. So I like to cook and I like to eat. And so that would probably be the avenue that I would go down amongst other things.
All right. Is there like a Tyler Reeves signature dish? Like, what are we talking here?
I make some very massive, delicious breakfast burritos and Philly cheesesteaks. Burgers are always kind of a thing that, I'm a huge burgers and fries person. That's my comfort food. So I'm always trying to make that better. I love the smash burgers and all that. And, getting a little fancy, but not too fancy to take away from the actual food you're cooking. But those are probably my best things. Anything you can cook in butter, deep fat fries, up my alley.
I still think that you're in the right field, Tyler, but you're making me second guess that with all of the things you just talked about. So, all right. I have some other categories that we'd like to talk about. Favorite book?
If I had to narrow it down, I'd probably say Trauma Junkie by Janice Hudson. That was one of the books that meant a lot to me when I was doing my critical care test studying for EagleMed and when I was doing my CFRN and CEN studying. Sometimes you just need a little bit of a break from studying. And so to read something else, it was like, oh my gosh, this is daunting. I'm never going to make it. These guys are so much better than me. They know all this stuff already. Like, I just don't, that's a lot of work, kind of overwhelming. And you read that book and it gave me some motivation. And that's kind of what would pull me out of that. Be like, oh, I'm just going to read this evening instead of doing 3 hours of studying. And the next day I'm like amped up. Yeah, let's go do this. I'm going to be one of the best out there. And yeah, that's kind of book got me through a lot of stuff. So.
Awesome. Great recommendation. All right. Favorite movie, TV show, or it can be a binge-worthy series that you would like to advise us on.
Yeah, so my life kind of revolves around medicine a lot. Trauma Life in the ER is always one of my favorites. Growing up, that was also a thing. I wanted to be a trauma nurse back in the day, in consideration like, oh, that would be a good experience for flight. But really, if we have to go to normal people TV shows, I would say Ozark is one of my favorite ones. And the only downfall to that is it ended. So I'm kind of disappointed by that. But
Yeah, my husband really liked that one. But I will say for someone who is, I pretty much only want to watch a show if I know that the season is done. I'm one of those people, like, if you tell me like, oh, there's still got 16 more episodes before it's done for the season, I'm going to wait till the 16 episodes are done. And then, oh, I'm going to watch the show, the whole thing. So for someone who is looking for a start and an end when I approach TV series, this is a good recommendation. So, all right,
yeah,
noted.
Good at waiting, and it actually took me a few seasons before like everybody's like, oh, this is so great, and I'm like, oh, I'll follow the hype, I'll see if it's worth it. It was such a slow start. I was like, yeah, this isn't something that I'm probably going to watch. And then I got a bit more into it and it was like, okay, yeah, now I'm kind of hooked, but it was already done recording by the time I got into it, so I was able to burn through that pretty quick.
Nice. Well, like I said, I like it when people recommend shows that I'm like, oh, it's done. Perfect. I can put it on my list. All right. Favorite musical artist?
I would probably have to say that's another one where I don't have just one answer. I like Bon Jovi a lot, AC/DC, Guns N' Roses, Disciple, Lifehouse, those kind of folks. But if I had to go off one person, Morgan Wallen's been kind of tripping my trigger lately. So
I like that. Lots of classics, some good rock, throwing in some new stuff there. Sometimes my playlists, I might say, have a lot of variety for those who are like, oh, I didn't expect that. So it's good. I think it's good to mix it up a little bit. And it sounds like that's what you're doing. All right. This is a question. I love asking this to all of our podcast guests because you're doing a lot. You're keeping up with a lot of things. You're growing yourself. You're helping to educate other people. You're flying and taking care of your patients. You got home life, all of those things, right? But what is your self-care go-to or hobby, like outside of healthcare, that just helps you reset so that way you can come back and take on all the things that you're doing?
Well, I think for me, I like to hunt, I like to fish, and we go out to the lake a lot. On Wilson Lake, I think is the biggest clearwater lake in Kansas, and that was about 8 miles from my hometown. I was just looking at buying a pontoon a couple days ago. Really, there's not a lot of spare time in my life between working, a full-time job and two PRNs, and most importantly, my son, he's got my coaches ball teams, and he's in baseball and football and soccer and whatever other wrestling they were in for a while. And so I just try to do anything I can with him. We do a lot of traveling. We've been to Montana recently, and we like to go to medical conferences, and not only do that, but also kind of make it into a trip and go out and do other things in our downtime there. So I would say probably traveling is our biggest thing, and fishing. Anything we can do together is a nice release for me. So I enjoy that.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. We appreciate it. If our audience wanted to follow you online, what social media platforms are you on?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. I also run the EagleMed 10 Great Bend, Kansas Facebook page, as well as the KanStaff Nurses LLC Facebook page. LinkedIn would probably be the best way. And then if you have any specific questions, I'm always available to answer questions. I'll help you out in any way I can, throw you around as many resources as I can, and steer you in the right direction if this is something you'd love to do.
Tyler, I have to say, it has been such a pleasure to spend some time with you this afternoon, learning more about you. You are absolutely a role model for our profession and our industry. And I am inspired by the way you take your role so seriously. And it was obvious during your visit, it's obvious during this conversation, and even came through quite clearly in the nomination that was written for you for the award. You really care deeply about the patients you're taking care of and their families and your community and the team that you work with. And I remember when we were at your award visit, you looked over at your son in the audience when you were up there talking. You were saying some words, and you looked over and you said, I just want to be the best I can be for my son. And I never imagined that I would be standing here receiving this award. And I have no idea what I'm going to do to ever be able to top this. Tyler, I think that we will find out soon enough what that's going to be. And we are really excited and looking forward to following your career and seeing what you're going to do from here. So thank you for that. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to our fabulous host, Holly.
Well, I want to take this time to thank Tyler for joining us for this episode of BCEN and Friends. Thank you, Tyler, for sharing your enthusiasm, your expertise, and your experiences in nursing with us. You have worked hard to pursue excellence through continued professional development. I know you're inspiring others to reach a little bit further, to distinguish themselves in this profession that we love. We truly appreciate you and all that you are doing. And to all of our listeners, we hope you will stay tuned as we continue with BCEN and Friends and bring you new, meaningful content and perspectives. If you have a suggestion for an episode, please email us at bcn@bcn.org. I'm Holly Briggs, here with Janie Shoemaker, and on behalf of the entire BCEN team, we thank and celebrate you for all that you're doing as professional nurses across the emergency spectrum. Until next time, we are out.